Thank you very much. And welcome in the big family of the Sans Frontières. You know, without borderism exist. This is a gang. Welcome to the gang. So, first of all, I should like to thank you for this invitation, and especially for the honor you confer on me by entrusting me with this keynote speech. Keynote means key. I have no key. Following my friend, President Martia Tissari, and facing you, Erkki, it is a real honor. So today the meeting is very important. It's fundamental to ensure that there is an interaction between all the fields. We need to work not exclusively on the base of our respective and very respectful national history. We need to access to the various sources and documents, and not only the historian, civil society, politicians, everybody. We need to share experience. Just think about what we did, Marty, the UN system, and your humble servant in Kosovo, rightly or badly. But there is no more war, and it has taken a long time. I serve, as you said, sir, Mr. Chairman, as Minister for Foreign Affairs. But that is not the place where I have learned diplomacy and history the best way. That's not the place where I have understood the ideas which help me comprehend the world. I've learned history and diplomacy, if I understand the word, in the field, in books also, of course. If you want to understand how we went to the First World War, read, you wrote, The Sleepwalkers, written by Christopher Clark. This is the way no people were talking to anybody. They were not talking to each other. They just went to war. And of course, you have also to read novels on this period, not only historical book. I learned more about diplomacy during more than 40 years as humanitarian worker. Humanitarians, so-called at that time, French doctors, and fortunately they are not only French. And I learned also the reality as Minister of Health. But talking to the historian was not the best place to understand what I have seen. I've learned history by taking risk, by venturing out in countries which were not familiar to me, by confronting ideas that weren't mine, by reaching out to people who weren't necessarily friends, by offering my medical help, medical experience to wounded people I was politically opposed to. I have learned history by wandering all over the world, by reading, by exchanging with others, and above all, through my actions. Treating children is certainly a better lesson than reading a book. When we created Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, and it was in 71, my dear friends, 71, after this awful war of Biafra, Nigeria, and it was in 68, this Biafra war. It was in that time when we create Doctors Without Borders, it was just impossible to take care of a patient on the other line of this very theoretical line of a border. It was against the law, even to treat as a French doctor the Italian patient or the Finnish patient. It was against the law. So we decided to change the law before the lawyers. And this is the lesson. If you want to change history, don't count on historians. Okay, if you do not react, you're a very peaceful people, huh? History and historian were turned to past, and we are, if I understand well, turned to the future. So the theoretical lessons were not enough to understand human being. Human beings are made of flesh and blood. They are also made of national identities. But above all, they are made of different backgrounds, different cultures, if we use to say shyly in diplomacy, we said culture. That is to say, humans are made of roots and dreams. And this is precisely why historian contribution is essential to understand the world, in the same way as understanding the world is essential to understand history. Today, I would therefore like to tell you about the suffering world I know little, about my understanding of its history, about the conformism of some historians, about my perception of its memory, and about what borders have represented for this history and this memory for the world and for me. And according to my experience, and considering what's going on in Syria, I know something. History has no memory. Let's talk about historian and borders, because historian without borders, I'm aware about borders more than about historian. History is not a privilege, the property of only historian. Borders have played a major role in my life. They have guided part of my commitment as a doctor and as an activist, and also as a minister. At the same time, fully aware I was of their importance and of the need to go beyond them. Throughout all these days, years, I was able to grasp the ambiguity of the lines that divide and shape our world. And these lines were consecrated, supported, strengthened by some historians. I will revert later on the damaging effect and how I tried to fight them. But I should like to start by underlining their virtue, which indeed exists. From my experience, the importance of border is a double experience. First of all, it has to do with democracy. For borders are the framework in which sovereignty is exercised. From Biafra, where I told you I started my sad career with the International Red Cross Committee, to Kosovo, where I was with the UN system, and tomorrow with Iraqi people, Kurdish people, the people oppressed by powerful empires or small states need orders to signify their independence, their interdependence, freedom, and their right to be themselves. This democratic function of borders confers on them another symbolic dimension. Borders, even if they are fantasy, contested or negated, mean that you still believe in yourself. Borders give you the right to hope for your own destiny, a better future, a revolution, a project, or simply a country for your children. I felt that illusion from very far, since I told you Biafra, Lebanon, Chad, Libya, 40 years of, let's say, fight against war or fight for peace. Of course, in conflicts, bloodshed, torture, and jails, with leaders betraying the poor volunteers, betraying future and romanticism, and also with very great leaders fighting for peace. At first, borders and their first ideas are hope and sometimes illusion. To create this border, more history than geography is needed. In general, you need religion, myth, religion again, and a language. We witness in Kosovo, sorry to come back, dear Marty, the weight of history in the borders and in the tension they created. And we were not absolutely pleased to separate, to cut the country. It was just impossible to do something else. Otherwise, let the people kill each other. And what is going on in Syria right now? Since close to 5 years, we are witness. We were not witness in Kosovo. We were part of the peace process. The tragedy in Kosovo is one of the many examples of this Europe where nationalism were forged during the 19th century. They were born out of the so-called founding myth, who glorified a buried past and sometimes even made it up, was not very prudent in the Balkan area. This tragedy in Kosovo often revolved around the memory, a very good example of the Battle of the Field of Blackbirds. It was a negative event or a positive event. A defeat, among others, Serbia against the Kosovo. The defeat was which in the 19th century was, 1,000 years after, was promoted to the rank of national and nationalistic myth and took in the 20th century the scale we witness. Who were right? Who were the winners? What did the historian say about the Battle of the Field of Blackbirds? It was the symbol of a defeat or the symbol of a victory? I think well, at last, we stopped the killing. I want to say something. Somebody is in charge. Okay, because you know, unfortunately, our friend, the Russian member of Memorial, is not able to come to our discussion, and so we have to enlarge the time. Let's talk about borders and misfortune. I was talking about the Battle of the Field of Blackbird, but I just read a new book published in France on one of the famous Napoleon's battle, Eylau. We believed, and I've learned from historian people, French historian and a lot of other historians, that Eylau was a victory of Napoleon. Well, learn all the books, either some in Germany, but mainly in Russia. Eylau was a Russian victory. So, another time, when you reinforce, of course, the tension in saying so. I have to balance my time. Of course, I was very positive about the way we form with nationalism and very great battles, the positive role of borders. But borders also is driving the nation to misfortune. And while borders have first of all allowed freedom or a signal to freedom, they also generate oppression. For me, in the political and moral history which shaped my awareness, workers invoke Goebbels' famous statement in the League of the Nations in 1933. The Nazi leader answering to a protester, said, "A man's home is his castle." En français, on dit charbonnier est maître chez soi, which justified as much as the Third Reich massacre as the inaction of democracy in face of the biggest atrocity in history. A man's home is his castle. Most of my life was devoted to ensuring that such statements would never be tolerated again. You know, we always say at the end of a war, never again. And you are waiting for the next one. We said never again about Syria. We said never again about Iraq. We said never again several times. And it restarts again. Throughout the last century, borders have allowed the emergence of dictatorship, generate wars, and nurtured blindness. I have been a witness to many of these tragedies. I have measured the reality of these borders. I have seen what was done in the name of history, and even more in the name of the identities which they are thus strengthened by borders and historians. I wanted to talk with our Russian friend about Crimea. It was the last, not the last, one of the last movement crossing the border in the negative sense of the word. But I remember something in a way worse. I supported the fight. I was a medical doctor. I was supporting in helping the people. I was not politically supporting the Southern Sudan against the Northern Sudan. During 20 years, they fought. So at the end, Southern Sudan was free and independent. And what happened? After the death of John Garang, who was a big leader, President Salva Kiir and the Vice President Riek Machar start, let's say, killing another time the rest of their people. So by dozens of thousands, the little children of Southern Sudan were dying these last 2 years. What did we do? Nothing, nothing, and nothing. Of course, the good humanitarian people, of course, the ICRC, of course, some humanitarian organizations, they tried to access to the children, but it was so difficult. So this is just a caricature. They fought for borders during 20 years. They had the border, they fought against each other for the power. And they're still fighting, but in a way, because Salva Kiir received Riek Machar less than 2 months ago in Juba, and they restart the same government. Okay. I want to say something about religion and religious people. Because in my sad career, I've always discovered hidden behind the confrontations that religion were playing a role. Religion. Only one battle was not, it was the football, the soccer battle. It was between San Salvador and it was Managua, I don't remember the name. Salvador and Honduras. But it was a real war. They were killing each other after the football game. A part of that ridiculous example, religion is always in favor of peace before the war. Always talking in the dialogue between the religion is sometimes a good one. But after the start of the war, religion, of course, is supporting part in a camp against the other. So the idea of historian without border is a very, very important idea. And you said so, Erkki, very clearly. The role of historian in mediation is too weak the role of historian to prevent the wars doesn't exist, in fact. Some very good historians, politically minded, yes, they are playing a role, but not enough. Historians are coming after the war. They are, let's say, fixing, they are writing down what is the truth of the moment. But in all my, let's say, involvement in mediation, was a bit strong, I never seen really historian people or academic people playing a role. Is it to say that it's devoted, this particular important role is devoted to politicians? Certainly not. And your idea of involving the people together, one side and the other, to start understanding what is the culture, the behavior, and the suffering also of both sides, looks like very, very important. But I don't want to stop. Just, I want to underline all the difficulties, but you know the difficulties are key, certainly. You will face all the academic. In creating such a important and a revolutionary, it's a revolution. You will face a lot of enemies and a lot of people, let's say, conformist people. As I told you when we created Médecins Sans Frontières, we were called by all the doctors of my country, doctor without diploma. We were absolutely not received by anybody of the academic in medicine. When we received the Nobel Prize, it was a bit better. But I had to be at the post of Minister of Health to allow the volunteers to leave from their hospital, from their services. Of course, they were non-paid people, but just to leave from the hospital where they were working in, it was not only unpopular, but it was against the law. Because to help somebody on the other side of the border was not allowed. You were outlaw. And of course, you were outlaw crossing the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan to take care of the Afghan people. But even in that splendid illusion I have to talk about at last. Do you know a better experience of no borderism than European Union? European Union was and is the example, the supreme example of having a unity to make peace. And at the beginning, we were setting up European Union to avoid war on our continent, and we did. Not in Balkan, but we treated the problem another way, and we were successful. So, we won. But what do we win? Oh, big success. Erasmus, Schengen. But what did we do facing the migrants in the Mediterranean Sea? My country was absolutely negative. Sorry, Mr. Ambassador, my good friend Mostua, I'm very sorry. But after close to, let's say, 50 years, a bit more, we were unable to welcome the migrants. 28 countries. I know that you have taken a lot. I know that Madame Merkel saved the honor of Europe. But I remember something as Doctor Without Borders, an historian without borders. When it was the end of the Vietnamese War, we, the French people, Doctors of the World, Doctors Without Borders, etc., we sent 7 rescue boats in the China Sea, 7 French rescue boats. And the Norwegians, they send one. And the Germans send one, etc. And we were rescuing the people at 12,000 kilometers from our Mediterranean Sea. And we did. And I personally favorize the welcome of 150,000, sorry, 150,000 Vietnamese in my country, France, without any problem. So, it was in, let's say, 80s, 81, 82, 83, etc., during years. And now, we are, geography didn't change. We are at the border, the northern border of the Mediterranean Sea. We have port and navy, vessel, and we didn't do anything like that. And we refused. So, no borderism is less popular than before. Yes, I know. Less popular than before. And you are creating another field of no borderism. Good luck. I really appreciate the way you invited me, but, my dear friends, save Europe, because in the heart of the people, Europe doesn't exist anymore. All things are getting bad. This is a European fault. Things, when it happens, getting well is a national victory. Be careful. Thank you very much.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to chair and moderate this first session with the title History and Memory. As we heard from Mr. Kouchner, history is open for several interpretations, and memory in this context functions as a powerful tool for creating these interpretations at the individual level, but also at the collective level, establishing memories which hide interpretations, political interpretations of history. Many thanks, Mr. Kouchner, for your remarks about the multiple meanings of borders. We will certainly get back to your experiences. As said, Mr. Roginski, Professor Roginski, won't be with us this morning, but we will have a very good panel, because the person, there would be no better person to address this panel than Mrs. Elisabeth Rehn. We know all her in Finland and also in Europe. She was the first ever female Minister of Defense in Finland from 1990 to 1984 until 1995. Many years, and after that she has been in special tasks in conflict regions, in UN-related tasks. But apart from that, she has also been speaking about her experiences openly. So we will now hear comments to this topic, history and memory, from Mrs. Rehn, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, Erkki. Bernard, you gave again a very enlightening, sad, fantastic vision of everything you have experienced. And thank you for welcoming us to Sans Frontières, whatever the frontiers are. History is just, unfortunately, too much about wars. And of course, it's the victors who are writing the history mostly. And normally they are not women who are those who are writing the victories. I'm looking back at my own history lessons and what I'm remembering. By the way, when Martti, you have 60 years from your student class now, I will celebrate 63 after a couple of weeks in my student class, because we have found that you must have it every year, because so many are unfortunately dropping out for natural reasons. But from these lessons, it's the dates of battles that I remember. 732, the Battle of Poitiers. The 1066, Battle of Hastings. Of course, Magna Carta, 1215, that is something I remember. That was an attempt for mediation between the king and the rebellious barons. I think the Pope interfered and annulled the whole treaty, but then, and they had the bloody war, but then it became that Magna Carta that is the manifesto for liberty and human rights as well as it plays. But what I'm just asking myself that how much does all this really mean for all of us ordinary people, and how much is it still a rule that it's the battles, it's the wars that are deciding our life. Of course, I have to admit that I'm definitely not a historian, I'm not a researcher, I'm just only a person who happened to land up in places where history partly is made. And that has given me some views for quite a long time. It was, of course, for my work at the Balkans too, when I was appointed as the Human Rights Rapporteur for UN in the former Yugoslavia, in the territory of former Yugoslavia, including Kosovo. Then I experienced exactly the same with the Battle of Kosovo-Polje. All people asked me, but Madam Rehn, don't you know the Battle of Kosovo-Polje? And I said, yes, of course, but it was more than 600 years ago, and it's really so important still. Yes, it's deciding everything that we are doing, and we have to honor it, and we have to understand it. And so it was in one way very easy with the burden of history, because every person I met, they could be the worst criminals or even some nice people. So the first half an hour of the meeting, I didn't have to listen too much because I knew what they are telling about the history. A little bit different depending on whose side you had been. But then we could start to negotiate and talk and so on. But something that is very sad is that history, through the history of Balkans, through all the different countries, like in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where I then ended up as the SIG also for Kofi Annan, the special representative. It's still so badly rooted that when I, during my time, tried to fight for the same history curriculum in the schools of Bosnia and Herzegovina, still it has not been successful. There is different history taught in for the different Serbs, Croats, Bosniaks, and that's something totally sad. I have tried to make my part of this by being their founding 10 years ago. The United World College in Mostar. I'm leaving for Mostar tomorrow morning. And that's something that I've tried to show the example, that young people can live together and they can really work together, they can have the same history. But this is extremely difficult, difficult to really get through with all of this. At the same time, I have met of the just of these young people in the Balkans that don't want to know anymore, at least for the moment, about the history. They don't want to remember how many people were killed and who were the perpetrators, who were the victims. Something that is quite crystal clear, that those who definitely are the victims are the women and girls, all through all wars nowadays. I made a report for UN based on the Security Council resolution Women, Peace and Security 1325. I made a report together with Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and we traveled for all the conflict regions in 2002, starting with Cambodia and East Timor, with Colombia because of the cocaine war. I have understood that now there are some negotiations between FARC and the government, and all the countries there between, 14 regions of war. And all over, it seems, in these civil wars nowadays, that the women bodies are the battlefield of the fighting troops. And that's, of course, something that is a misery. But young people can still look a little bit forward. I would still like to say something about just the way that we are working. We, the Swedish international community, we are coming to save the country. We have sometimes a lot of money to place, like in the case of Kosovo, in the peace operation. And we want it, we teach a lot of things, and we want it to be a quick fix. That now we have been so nice, now we have been supporting, now we have been teaching you about peace. Now you should be good friends and just forget about that your son is rotting somewhere in a mass grave, your daughter was raped, your house, if you can return, it's destroyed, and you have a lot of landmines still in the garden. Just be friends with your neighbors again, even if you have all this in the background. It's not working like this. We have to give them time. And I'm always reminding myself about my own country's history. When we took our independence, we had the Civil War, 1918. It was shameful and brutal, and we have nothing to be proud of. And it has taken decades for us to come over this. And sometimes I even wonder if we have totally already overcome this, what happened then. Why are we then going to ask from these people that we try to help, who are terrifying tragedies, Syria or so, that they should forget and forgive immediately? We must give time, but we must be helpful and supporting in every way. I totally share your view on Europe. It's a disaster. Where is the humanism? Where is the Magna Carta? Where is everything? And as last, to make it a little bit lighter, even if it's very, very serious. But as media, there are many representatives, is mostly focused on something that is serious and big to be written about. And for now, at least here in Europe, it's the situation of Syria, and then it's the enormous mass of asylum seekers. And that's that. And then it was in one way so lovely, even if I didn't have the opportunity because I was working somewhere abroad, to read about the European Song Contest. That just in the middle of this nonsense, there came just with a winning song, just the knowledge of that there is a people, the Tatar population, that most of the spectators certainly and those who listen didn't know anything about. through this silly event, at least it come up in the minds and understanding of people that there is that minority, and there are so many others that we should know more about, but we don't need to arrange a song contest to get to know about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elisabeth Rehn, for your remarks. There will soon be a possibility to ask from the audience my questions and comments to the two speakers. Before that, I will raise one issue which I think you both, I would like to have your views on. You both referred to the difficulty of preventing conflicts. Mr. Kouchner said, you used the words, again and again, not again there will be a war. We saw it coming in Syria. We recognize the presence of conflictual understandings of history. We somehow know where it leads. Why are we totally incapable many times of doing anything? Why is it so difficult to adopt an objective position in a crisis and start mediating? Why is it so much easier to take part in or show loyalty or support to one of the parties? This is perhaps the most crucial question of our time again. Mr. Kouchner.
Well, I don't know how to use your splendid, very modern...
You do as I do, just... Yes, functions like that. Yes, please. Yes.
Do you listen? Do you hear? Well, lucky you are, because I was not. Well, this is a very difficult and eternal question. Yes, we failed in preventing conflict. Sometimes it happened. It has happened in the Balkans. We were lucky enough to prevent the war in Macedonia. Remember, Elisabeth? Why? Because in Macedonia, of course, the Serbs and the local people, they were there, confronted, not making war. And we sent blue helmets. I remember the number was very little, 800 or 700. Yes. And this presence in Macedonia prevented the war. And it was a success. But for the rest, we are interested by public opinion. We are interested, I'm talking in the name of the politician, but I'm not a politician, according to my opinion. And you have to be re-elected, and at least elected, if you are saying the truth, sorry to be rude, if you are saying the truth, you are not elected. So you have to say, we're going to peace, and we'll fight for peace, and etc., etc. But this is not true. And at the end of the day, people are dying, not in your country, but who are no longer interested in the deaths of the other. We were. But indignation in our good European Union is stepping back. In my country, France, named as the country of human rights, we were able to, let's say, blow up the right of asylum. There is no more right of asylum. We signed the Geneva Convention, one of the first, and we didn't apply the Geneva Convention. And I'm completely in agreement with Elisabeth. I mean, Europe was based on some very good principle, human rights, right of asylum, a balance in between the women and the men, etc., etc. We did not respect that. So why? Because there is an economical crisis. Well, consider the state of your country, Finland, or my country, France, compared to the rest of the world. Yes, we are in a crisis, but not the same way, not the same level. Second, of course, we are fed up by the spectacle, the images of the killing and the bloodbaths. Did your children play with video games? You see what is in video games? Pa, 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 and the head exploded, and the blood is everywhere. Okay. Are you a fan of the American, and not only American, series in TV? Look what's going on. So, in a way, in images, war is popular. How to fight against that? This is all the education. In my country, the youngsters, they are not learning about the Algerian war. They are not, because this is very difficult, because they are not, I mean, the teachers are not enough educated. We killed in between 600,000 and 1 million Algerian people in that war. It is not in the program. That's a lot of little reason. But just, sorry, I don't want to take the floor for too long, but we cannot just escape from the Syrian war. Yesterday, another time, the peace talks were a failure, failed. So what? What are we supposed to do? Obama was elected in promising to the American people not to go another time to war, not to play the police in the world. He was elected, and he said so. So we, the very good European people, we used to ask the American, when there is a problem, we, of course, were very negative with the American policy, etc., but when something wrong is coming, well, asking the American to come and solve our problem. For this time, Obama came to Brussels and he said, this is a European problem. I don't want to be involved. He was talking about which problem? Ukraine. So what did we do in Ukraine? Crimea is out. And every day, I was in Ukraine last week, every day, in between 10 to 20 to 30, Ukrainian soldiers are dying. In the middle of, I know this is not European Union, but well, close to us. So this is no longer popular to send soldiers. President Hollande sent soldiers in Mali. He was right. And Mali is going a bit better, but it was not enough. République Centrafricaine, it's going better there. But I was talking about religion. Who is killing? Muslims are killing the Christian, Christians are killing the Muslim, République Centrafricaine. Religion, my dear. Do we have to suppress religion? Can we create religions without borders?
The answer is the challenge of public opinion and the culture of conflict that we seem to cherish instead of mediation. Elisabeth Rehn, how does it look like from your point of view?
Yes, I would say that there are all the possibilities for prevention. If we really listen to the people, and here I'm again especially stressing listening to the women. Because like in Kosovo, when I was around there from 95 to 90, oh yes, I was several years afterwards in other positions. In Kosovo, the women told me that now something is happening. Our husbands are bringing more and more weapons back home and bad things are happening. To whom can we report? Okay, I was then just honorary mission of Human Rights Rapporteur. I reported to UN, and then there came resolutions that yes, Elisabeth Rehn is totally right, something should be done. And then what happened were leading to the bombings and failed negotiations and so. But listen to the civil, it's not from somewhere outside, it's from the grassroots level we start to know when something is going to be wrong. And that is what we have to snatch up. And that is what now is also happening with Syria. I was very pleased to listen to a Finnish lady who is involved with the Mistura's advisory group of women organizations in Syria. And they have been very well represented. They are disagreeing because they are representing everything. But he can at least now check what is possible to take to the main negotiations, because between the women he can see what will be absolutely impossible to discuss in the big table, because there is not any kind of unified things to be taken to the table, in some of them. So we have to really trust the people themselves. And that is, of course, much less expensive than the full war. And now we learn about that the problems in Libya. Again, United States is selling just arms to them. But that is not the way of solving these problems. More arms, everybody is killing each other. Even if I was the defense minister for 5 years, I'm not very much fond of the arms and that way of making the decisions. I think that the diplomacy that Martti, you and others have represented, it is the way we should just go forward. And it's not impossible, definitely not.
Thank you so much. We have 5 minutes. I would very much welcome 2 concise questions or comments from the audience. If there are, I hope. Yes, please. The lady over there. Is there a microphone to the middle? Presidentin taakse. Could you please present yourself?
Check.
Dear Minister Elisabeth and Dr. Bernard, thank you very much for your contribution. You mentioned very much about the culture and religion. And I have studied very much culture in Andalusia in Spain. And they had a very good religion contract between different religions. Muslims, Christians, they work together in old Al-Andalus in Spain. So this is a very good historical example. So we may use in the future to the cultural history into our conflict resolution. That's my thought.
Thank you so much. Would we have another question or comment? Yes, over there.
Thank you very much. My name is Satu Suikari-Kleiven from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you so much for excellent presentations and to all the other speakers and for organizing this extremely interesting event. I wanted to ask about the role of justice in dealing with history. We've heard this morning that it takes time, of course, to forgive and to get over the injustice from the past. And and especially when we're thinking about situations where in the past there have been extremely serious crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity, this type of crimes, it seems very difficult to think that there could be a lasting peace or sustainable peace without justice being established in that situation. And I know that both of you have been working with these questions, and Minister Rehn has been devoting a lot of time and effort to supporting the victims of this type of crimes. So I wanted to hear your experiences, if you have, especially if you have some good examples of situations where justice has helped the healing process of individuals or societies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it has to be now the concluding remarks from the 2 of you.
I didn't understand what the first lady said.
I think it was more a remark, so you don't need to. You can get back to the latter question. You could also, perhaps, I add one brief question, and then we have your concluding remarks. When listening to you, I was thinking about, you both referred to these victories of war, wartime events, which form the collective memories and also are very powerful interpretations of history. How should we relate ourselves to them as external observers? And to these 3 questions and your concluding remarks. Who would like to start? Mrs. Rehn?
Thank you. Thank you for the question about the justice. I have had the pleasure of being the witness in tribunals for former Yugoslavia. That is not the pleasure. I felt like the perpetrator, but then serving for the International Criminal Court to the Trust Fund for Victims that is attached, not directly, but to the Rome Statute, a part of the whole justice. It has been very good to see that you really can do true justice. At least some release to the survivors of these crimes like war crimes, genocides, crimes against humanity, and all of those where there can be also projects that are helpful to gain some kind of so-called normal life afterwards. So there the justice is of good help. And the justice of the kind, like the Rwandan Gacaca justice, that is the traditional one where you are sitting under the tree with the wise man of the village, and you take the perpetrators, the victims, survivors together and discuss through what has happened. There can be apologies, there can be forgiveness. And so you have, so to say, speak true what has been happening. The only thing I'm opposing against is how long time it takes to get the court decisions, both in the like in the ICTY, it was in the Sierra Leonean tribunal, in all of them, and in ICC too. When you have child soldiers, for instance, and the crime was committed 14 years ago or 13 years ago, now when you are trying to get reparations to them they are grown-up men. And then about religions, I disagree a little bit with you, Bernard, about this, that the religions can't come together, because they really can work together, and they are working a lot. President Ahtisaari has used religious leaders a lot, if I understand correctly, to get them together, because they are a key instrument to get the peace talks to work. And I had good, then in the end of my work as SISG in Bosnia, I could get the different religion leaders together and talk at the same event, not perhaps to each other, but in the presence of each other on the same issues. So we should never forget the importance of the religious leaders and religions altogether. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Kouchner, in 2 minutes, please.
No, I agree. There is no peace without justice. But justice is coming after peace. And before peace, there is a war. And we are coming back to the same question. Is it possible to avoid, to prevent? Yes, we tried. And not only we tried, but in the UN system, we succeeded. The right to interfere, it has been voted. Access to the victim, it has been voted, etc. At the end of the process, responsibility to protect was voted not only by the Security Council, but also by the General Assembly of the UN system. And so what? Who is able to apply? Because it's always, by prevention, what does it mean? Sending troops? Is it always a military pre-solution? Yes, usually yes, unfortunately. And we didn't accept that in the recent bloodbath in the Middle East. And about religion, sorry, Elisabeth, my experiences are absolutely, let's say, negative. Yes, before the war, I remember a fantastic meeting of all the religion in Sarajevo, before the war. They were all together. After the war and the thousands and thousands of victims, yes, they regretted. But no, I'm sorry. This is also inside the religion. because you cannot contest that the Shiites are not completely in agreement with the Sunnite, and this is inside Islam. And they are fighting right now, in that moment. So my experience is very negative. Of course, you can meet religious people and you have to work with them. They are very good people, they are completely sincere, and they want to fight for peace, that's true. But unfortunately, it doesn't work so much. So, you know that only in South Africa, they organized a commission, Peace and Justice. It was Monsignor Tutu, another good religious man. But it was long. It was after the confrontation and peacetime. We tried in Kosovo, we tried also in some other places, and the people answered us, it's too early. I mean, the murder were too fresh. It depends of the behavior of the people and, of course, the level of disaster. And I remember my poor Sergio D'Amello wanted to organize something also in Iraq, but they killed them, all my friends, before setting up such a demonstration.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kouchner. At this stage, as we are running out of time, I would simply like to thank you both for your valuable perspectives. Also, thank you for your attention. This session is now closed.